Hello and welcome to the Justin Hamilton podcast. Today, Will Anderson is back. And just a bit of a heads up, we're recording this a couple of days after the terrible news of what happened in Bondi and also the news of Rob Reiner and his wife's awful death. And so we do touch on those topics, and the podcast is kind of infused with that to a certain extent. But just so you're not worried that we're not trying to be journalists, it's more of an emotional response to everything that's been going on. And the conversation goes in you know, different places as you would expect from one of these podcasts with the two of us. So we'll leave the journalism to the people who know what they're doing. And I heartily recommend if you want to cut through the noise, the Lamestream podcast. Those lads do a fantastic job of really explaining what's true, what's not true, what to keep an eye out for, and what to discard. But yes, it is. This podcast is definitely infused with the feelings from that experience. But as I said, it goes off into all sorts of directions. And look, you've heard us chat before. At some point, we get it back on track. It'll be tangent, 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 and then it comes right back to where it was at the start. So, yes. So anyway, I think you'll still enjoy this, and we finish somewhere. That's definitely a lot of fun. Yes, maybe we'll just get right into the podcast now. Oh, I should give a shout out to, yes, should not have forgotten this, to our sponsors, Wonder Pies, who came on board for the rest of this year, asked if they would be able to sponsor the show. And luckily, I find their food delicious and was more than happy to work out a situation where we could work together. If you live in Victoria, there's lots of outlets that you can check out their wonderful, delicious pies and pastries and everything else that they make. But if you go to wonderpies.com.au, you can find their whole range of product, and you can order stuff and you can have it sent to you and you can have it all in your home, which might come in quite handy considering we are coming up to the Christmas period. It might be just a very handy thing to be able to go to the fridge and pull something out and heat it up and be ready to go and not have to leave the confines of your home. So do go and check out the Wonder Pies website and see if there is something that speaks specifically to you. All right, I'll pop by at the end of the podcast and have a quick little chat to you about what's coming up. But for now, let's bring in Ando. How are you doing in the aftermath of everything that kind of happened over the weekend? Because you spent a lot of time living in Bondi. And, I need to kind of stress for anyone listening, this is not going to be journalism here. This is going to be
No.
an emotional kind of
Well,
response.
partly it's very dangerous to do any type of running commentary on a story that is still unfolding in its
Yeah.
various complexities. And there is so much misinformation and disinformation and just, people who are acting in good faith and not in good faith around this issue. So, like, to even try and work out what the clear story of everything is right now. Like, there are clear heroes and villains that are emerging, and I think there are plenty of other media that are covering those off, and that's not what we're here
Hmm.
to chat about, nor is it what we tend to chat about. But yeah, the Bondi of it all, just to, and I hesitate, like, in the same way as I don't want to be one of those people that when a famous celebrity dies, you go like, I met them once, so I'm going to make this all about me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But this is not like to make any of this about me, more just to reflect upon, my connection with that place, Bondi, because it is one of those places that if you have never been or if you have never lived there, maybe even like, because I
Hmm.
think that there is a certain idea of what Bondi is or represents, particularly now in the public consciousness, that he is not the Bondi that I knew or the Bondi that I loved. Whether it is true or not, I don't know. I don't have enough, day-to-day contact with that suburb anymore to know what it is truly like. But I imagine, like always, that it is an incredibly complex and varied suburb because it always has been. But it was the first place that I ever chose to live.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, I've told you this story before, but I share it with you, I guess, for others to hear as well, which is that when I first moved to Sydney, I never imagined that I was a person who would ever live in Sydney. And, particularly as a comedian in Australia, like Sydney wasn't painted in our era or generation as being part of the Australian comedy story, even though it had been such a rich and important part of the Australian comedy story. I think the Melbourne comedy scene and that Melbourne style of comedy and the festival style of comedy had become the preeminent or kind of most respected or critically adored style of comedy or whatever it might be. Like there was
Yeah.
great comedy happening in Sydney, but it was not the flavor of the moment. And so I never imagined that I would move to Sydney.
The video. Sorry, I gotta stop moving. I've forgotten to try and turn it off.
This is.
I'm never going to turn it off.
Oh, Justin, it's honestly the best. Like, because for people who listen to the previous episodes, you'll know what we're talking about. But there is a picture of David Bowie behind Justin that when your Zoom function has a thing that it looks obviously for the face that's in the middle of the screen and it zooms in on it,
Yeah.
which is fine. It's called Zoom and it's got a Zoom function. It makes sense. It's very on brand. I can't really complain about it. But what it means is, like, you just took a sip of your like tea or coffee just then, your morning beverage, your cup of water, whatever it was. Let's paint the picture. What is it that you were sipping?
It is a long black that I have brewed at home because we are recording in the morning, and I barely moved my head then, but that Zoom went, that's not enough of that face. We better go and find David Bowie.
It honestly is becoming almost like a punctuation to the end of your sentences.
Yeah.
Where you literally just said something, took a sip of coffee, and then just Bowie just like zoomed in to be like, hey, well done, Justin.
Yeah. You are always secretly my favorite son.
So when I moved to Sydney, it was so we are recording this it's 8:08 in the morning at the moment, and often when we catch up in Sydney, the two of us, because I don't live in Sydney anymore and you live there still, and often when we catch up we will have an 8 o'clock in the morning breakfast because it suits both of our schedules, and we'll have these sort of chats. So we decided that we would continue to have them this time of the morning, that we just have to make our own coffees rather than constantly just say yes when somebody offers to refill the one that we have on the table.
Yeah, I will pay $8 for another double, thank you. And from now on, when we do catch up in person, I'm going to have to bring a cutout of Bowie and just zoom it in for you to give you the full effect. Yeah.
Every time you make a good point.
Yeah.
I mean, I do.
I'll set a precedent.
It does feel like we're co-hosting the podcast with the ghost of David Bowie.
Yeah,
that
he's our producer. Oh man, I've recorded a feel bad Christmas podcast with Dave Anthony, and he lost his mind when he saw it happen. But also his camera's doing it as well. So we were two very old men enjoying zooming in and out of different faces.
It's not just that it's the special effect, though. I think it's just the power of that specific Bowie image as well when it zooms in.
Yeah. Well, he's holding his hand out, so when it does look like it could be a scene from Now You See It.
Well, you know how the Mona Lisa, apparently the eyes follow you around the room.
It
feels like that image. It's not actually the zoom that's doing the zooming in. It's the power of that image of David Bowie that has the power to zoom out.
Yeah. Just imagine a different lyric every time he zooms in.
When I first moved to Sydney in the year 2000 because they asked me to. Adam Spencer and I had started doing the Triple J breakfast show together, but I'd been doing it down the line from Melbourne. So I would go into the ABC at South Bank and sit in a little TARDIS booth out the back of the ABC and, do the show there. And this is back in the day where there's no, if you're in a modern day radio studio, often the hosts will not be in the same room anymore. And the technology is such that you can feel like you are in the same room because you can do what we're doing right now, have this real-time conversation with video and being able to see the person and all these things. But this was back more in the day where, it was just me listening as hard as I could at all
Right, yeah.
times.
So hard. They were hard, because sometimes someone would just pause and you'd go to speak and then they'd continue speaking, and it was, yeah, tricky.
That's the stuff that when you look at someone's face, you can tell that they're at the end of the sentence or halfway through and about to launch into the next bit of the sentence. But when you're
Yeah,
down the line, you
yeah,
are purely just guessing between whether you're about to cut them off or leave them hanging. But it's
yeah.
not just, you don't get the relaxation in between either, because in the breaks in between, you'll be discussing what you're going to do next, which when you're in the studio can be quite a fun thing. You
Yes.
can duck in and out, you can go and get a sandwich, you can like all these things. But when you're down the line, it is listening hard when you're on air and listening equally as hard when you're off air to know whether they're speaking to you or whether they're speaking to each other in the studio or
Yeah,
yeah, exhausting. But
yeah,
so in some ways it was quite a relief when they asked me to move to Sydney and do the show, and particularly because it was around the Olympics in the year 2000. It was going to be a very exciting time, but I was nervous about moving up there and what effect it might have on my comedy career and whether I would enjoy living in Sydney and being part of that Sydney comedy community, or whether there was a Sydney comedy community and what it looked like. And I didn't really know a lot of people in
yeah,
Sydney.
yeah,
And so I'd been living in like Fitzroy and North Carlton and places like that in Melbourne. So for people who don't know, they're the sort of the inner hipper suburbs of, the hip, like what would be the Silver Lakes or the
yeah,
whatever it might be, the Williamsburgs or whatever those references are these days. Who knows? Like, what they would be in different countries. What the
yeah,
fuck do I know? If
yeah,
I knew, they
yeah,
wouldn't be cool places.
yeah.
That would rule it out from being a cool place that I knew what it was.
That was cool 7 years ago. Yep, that
Yeah.
seems about right.
Yep. That seems about right for me to have heard about it now. So, but they were the kind of artistic inner suburbs, I guess. And so when I was moving to Sydney and asking people, where do you think I should live? Because this is, of course, pre-internet and stuff like that, or like pre what we consider to be the internet. So it's not as simple as just Googling, where's the place that's like the place I live or anything.
Yeah,
So much of it is just what somebody is telling you, or,
yeah,
um, your opinions are very much formed by one or two people's, opinions, because they're the only ones that you have access to. And so I had become pretty convinced that I would find myself in the inner west of Sydney. That seemed to be the kind of direct equivalent, like a Newtown or somewhere like that
yeah.
was where I thought that I would end up living.
Yeah, funny in hindsight, it definitely would have, Newtown seems like it would have been a one for one.
Yeah, and that was my intention when I moved
Yeah,
up, and it was close to work. And so I went and had a look at Newtown. And Newtown now I absolutely adore.
yeah,
Like, it's stunning. I mean, particularly that Enmore end of Newtown. Maybe the middle part of it's got a bit full on, but over the last 20 or 30 years, it's been one of those incredible suburbs and strips and areas, and I've loved it.
yeah,
But I did feel like it was just a more expensive version of where I had been living,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it was hard to
yeah.
get over that. It was
Mm,
hard to say, why am I just going to get the exact same experience that I have had in Melbourne,
yeah, for
but
more.
paying heaps more than I
Yeah,
was paying in Melbourne for that same
yeah,
experience? And Paul McDermott of the Doug Anthony All Stars, and he was hosting Good News Week at the time. Now, both you and I had grown up adoring the Doug Anthony All Stars. And
yeah,
it's funny in a country the size of Australia. Sorry, I've been talking a lot so far, but maybe this is something that you can jump in on it, which is that in a country like Australia, did you ever imagine that when you were growing up watching, say, the Doug Anthony All Stars on the big gig, that like later in your life, you would become friends with, like work with be colleagues with those. I mean, to me, they seemed like that would be like me going, yeah, I'm probably going to work with the Beatles or whatever.
Right, yeah. Well, so I've been covering this on my Substack actually of which has turned into a surprise memoir. One Foot in the Spotlight was always a joke I used to make to you, and then I went, hey, you know what, that's actually a good title.
Mhm.
And so I met those guys when I was 16. But even then, I would see them when they would come to Adelaide, but they still felt other. It wasn't like you were ever gonna like they were the people that you were lucky enough to kind of know that they'd say, "Hey, let me put you on the door," and it it was a it was a weird feeling to suddenly realize that you were friends, and then let alone colleagues. Colleagues was a strange feeling, and I think it was uh it was and it was a strange feeling overall, and it was also a strange feeling. Each one had a different kind of individual reaction to that as well, and so you know, McDermott he's a fascinating guy. He's extremely talented, and he's complicated, and he's generous, and he's quiet, and sometimes you feel like you're best friends with him, and sometimes he looks at you as if you're, what are you doing here? And it's like, this is still the same conversation. And then he's fine, So Paul especially has been a funny one over the many decades.
Well, I think Paul. I mean, yeah, Richard clearly in some ways has been the most successful of all of them, both as an author and a broadcaster, and yeah, the incredible career that he has managed to forge post the Doug Anthony All Stars,
Yeah,
and and everybody knows and can see demonstrably how sort of smart and diligent and studious and compassionate and intelligent Richard is.
yeah. He kind of
I
found a lane that suited him, uh, and uh, kind of built himself even more so in that. His transition from the All Stars to who he is now is actually a probably a good blueprint for anyone who wants to see where their career can take them.
Yeah, well, he's a great example too of somebody who goes, well, just because one part of my career has been this doesn't mean the rest of my career has to be
Yeah,
the exact same thing as that. And
yeah,
so, and you've obviously just recently been like, you worked with Richard directing or like
yeah,
helping direct the show that they did for Conversations. And so,
yeah.
even that idea that you met them as a 16-year-old kid and then there
Yeah.
you are directing
There I
this
am.
incredibly adult,
Mate,
show
yeah,
that they are
yeah.
doing.
There was one section of their show that I was saying. There was one section of the conversation show that they were adamant that they wanted in the show, which was explaining how the inner workings of the show works. And I just, my thoughts on that was people say that, but what they really want to know is, it's like when people say to us, "Hey, what's it like being a stand-up comedian?" But the truth is, they say, "Tell me about Husey." So
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 when you're directing somebody like a Richard,
yeah,
because like it's somebody that you grew up like watching and enjoying, and they are someone who has such a established. Because I mean, there's a difference between the directing of Jenny Tian, as we talked about last time, which is
yeah,
Jenny is a comedian on the rise, like
yeah,
a very well established comedian in her own right now. So like it would be dismissive and wrong to
yeah,
refer to her as a like an emerging comedian. She is well and truly emerged.
yeah, yeah,
You know, she's fantastic and established and has. But
yeah,
you were working with her as she kind of transitioned through that idea of being like someone whose star is on the rise to someone whose star is like more firmly
yeah,
established. Whereas Richard, you're coming in as someone you watched on TV when you were a kid and
yeah,
grew up with, have been friends with over those last 30 years. I mean, you and
yeah,
Richard in particular have been,
yeah,
friends over that period of time, but then still stepping into a role where you are, you know, have to engage with them in that professional way and say, hey, I know I recently sat next to Andrew Denton at Russell Howcroft's like 60th birthday lunch, and Andrew and I had a complicated, way of working out how we would work with each other because, particularly, with Andrew, it was about me. Some of it, at least. I think some of it, and maybe this is me just projecting onto him. This is my guess. Some of it, I think, was he'd been the person who sat in the middle chair, and he was transitioning into being the person who was, the person behind the scenes,
Yeah.
and hadn't quite fully made that transition yet. Probably
Yeah.
hadn't made it quite as much as he thought he had made it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right. And that was bothersome to me because I was the person who was, now meant to be sitting there doing that.
Yeah.
He may not have thought that, like, by the way, and that's just my interpretation of that.
Yeah. Of
But
course.
in reverse, I think what I probably, was struggling against was this real battle too of this guy is my hero. I grew up watching him. Like, I would not be doing what I am doing without him.
Yeah.
Should I just say yes to the thing that he is suggesting that we do, or do I truly believe that it is a bad idea? And if so, how do I, put that across? And
Yeah.
I think perhaps in retrospect, you almost then argue too vociferously
Yeah.
for your idea because you feel the need that if you're going to go in, to go all in. And I wish
Right.
that there had been a better way of, you're kind of being at a point where it would be helpful for both of you to communicate in a better way.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Well,
so,
what you needed
yeah,
in probably a situation like that was like a third
yeah,
personality who was as strong as both of you, who also was a little bit removed, who could just, be the, the Glengarry Glen Ridge sketch from the Late Show. You needed
yeah,
boys, come on,
yeah.
language to kind of bring you together.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
And I think that, so I'm interested when you're directing somebody like Richard. Like,
yeah,
obviously you're a lot older now, you're much more mature. You and
yeah,
Richard probably have a different relationship to what Andrew and I had at that time. I was
yeah.
still a young kid establishing my career. Um, but do you like, is there any of that, or are you able to just go straight into a job like that and just treat it as the job that it is?
Uh, yeah, I feel pretty. I guess where I've matured over in the last decade of living in Sydney is that I feel that I have a strength of empathy when talking to someone. So I'm never going to come in too hard or well, each situation is kind of different, but I kind of know how to say, hey, that's a good idea, but I think in the context of this, it's not going to work, or hey, I this bit that you're doing over here, I think this is actually really working, or we should accentuate that. And I feel pretty confident about being able to balance all of that. Whereas I think in the past, maybe I definitely worked on some TV shows where ideas were being thrown around that I just knew in my heart of hearts were dog shit, and I couldn't communicate that as well because to me it was a little bit like, "What are you doing?" Well, this is insane what you're saying, and I would be a little bit more like that. Whereas now I think it also comes with age. Now I'd be a little bit like, oh, Justin's being quiet. What are your thoughts? Well, so less demonstrative.
Well, so I'm going to ask you then about Paul, because
Mm.
as you said, Paul is a more complex character. And I saw Paul just a couple of weeks ago, and I am always delighted when I see
Oh,
Paul McDermott because I
yes.
grew up adoring him. To me, he was, there was something about him that was other in the way that, yeah, each and every member of that group and the collaborators that they had an Auntie Donna-esque quality in a way, which was that they had a group of people around them that also help them be as good as they were, the Doug
Yeah.
Anthony All Stars. But the X factor, you
Yeah.
know, the Dustin Martin or the whatever it is was Paul McDermott. You know, the voice, but
Yeah.
wrapped up in the body and the attitude and that punk aesthetic, but that voice of an angel and those like the looks, that
Yeah.
kind of like he smells, but he's adorable sort of like look
Yeah.
that he had.
Yeah.
But so, like you said, so complex, never necessarily knew we. I mean, I would consider. I think Paul and I are dear friends, and
Yeah.
I you know, I'm pretty confident to say that.
Yeah.
Um, so, but we worked with him on Question Everything, and
Yeah.
it had been, in fact, I think he said it was the first time that he'd ever done a TV panel show as a guest. I think
Yeah.
was what he said, right?
Yeah.
And which surprised me at the time because, of course, for a generation of people, he became famous hosting Good News Week and the Good News Week spin-offs. And so
Yeah.
the idea that he had never been a guest on a panel show, I just think in my imagination and probably in the broader imagination is something that doesn't even make sense. You just be like, well, of course he's been on one of those other shows. But I think that because of the style of what Paul does and what he's good at, it doesn't necessarily fit neatly into those categories. And so we worked with him on Question Everything and had him as a guest, and it was an incredible episode. It was an incredible 4 episodes we could have
Mm.
released it as, because it was fair to say it was a pretty long and unwieldy record. And you know, and part of that was definitely because of the anarchy that Paul brought to the show and to the studio in the most wonderful way.
Yeah.
Like it was one of the true highlights of doing that show was that. But I know that a lot of so you were, for people who don't know, you know, you were the person who was on the front line of one of my dreams of the show was that everybody would go into the show fully prepared and knowing what they wanted to do and being able to do exactly what they wanted to do within the context of the framework we were providing for them. And you were the person who basically communicated that and then help them work out, you know, how to do that on the show
Yeah.
or to get that across on the show. And so what was working with Paul in that scenario like?
Yeah, it's so funnily, if we kind of go back to the three of them,
Mm,
like and I think I've told you this before, but when was getting into comedy, all three of them gave me advice, and all three bits of advice um sum up each one of them perfectly. So Richard was the one who encouraged, he was the one who planted the idea. He said comedy is wonderful. You have an idea, you get to perform it, you can travel all the world, you can meet interesting people. You could write a manuscript and 3 years later still not have any feedback on it, but you can have an idea, do it, get the response, do it. And I went, oh yeah, that's good.
weird that he said that and it was so specifically accurate.
Mate, so specifically accurate. Far out. Anyway, I'll give you something in a sec. And then McDermott said to me, yeah, Richard, the gift that keeps on giving, decades down the track. And then Paul said to me, don't get into comedy. It's full of terrible people. It'll break your heart and it'll drive you insane. And Tim said, Justin, no matter what anyone ever tells you, that swearing is always funny. And all three of them were correct in some way. And
And they all were fully establishing their characters.
yeah, yeah, they're like they're
That's good
all three.
writing. In one
Right.
line, you got a real sense of who each of them were and
Yeah,
what their insecurities and
yeah,
how much of it's funny also, isn't it, how much of our own sense of what we believe the situation we are in
yeah,
determines like what the situation we are in. Because I
yeah,
would argue that each of them, you know, what they said was also kind of what ended up happening in a way for them, in the way that they're like, because the way you approach something can
yeah.
often determine what you get out of it as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You have to be careful of
Yeah.
the things that you choose to believe in case they all accidentally come true.
Mm.
And
Yeah, you can
but
believe them into reality.
yeah, and
If you believe that comedy will break your heart, then I can guarantee you that comedy will break your
break
heart.
your
I mean,
heart.
comedy will break your heart every now and again, then regardless,
Yeah,
as will life, you
yeah.
know. Which brings us back to that idea of Paul. So
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
what is at the heart of it. I wanted to know what it was like to collaborate with Paul in
Yeah.
that.
Well, because so Paul was kind of like once I started performing, Paul was kind of the weirdest. Like Tim and Richard were right behind it, and Paul kind of viewed it, and I understand it because out of the three of them, Paul had the manic fans,
Mhm.
and I feel like I was probably one of them in
Yeah.
some way, So for him, it was a little
Also,
bit,
even in a bit of performance style, like, I
yeah,
mean, particularly in
absolutely.
those early
Well,
days.
he was the first guy that I knew danced. So when I was a
Yeah.
young guy and I went out and he'd say, come onto the dance floor, like you kind of ended up moving a little bit like him because you're mimicking the person in front of you, and being kind of comfortable with it. So, yeah, there was definitely that. But uh, there was a there it was also, I reckon, that was when he was transitioning from the All Stars to Mosh, which was a massive hit at the 96 Adelaide Fringe, in the perfect environment, in the perfect venue, and was fantastic. And then kind of uh was transferred to the town hall in Melbourne,
Yeah.
and kind of lost a little bit of its magic,
Did not work, did it?
and
It
it
was
should
one
have
of those
been
things that,
a
like,
small
these
club.
days, yeah, well, these days it would be a Spiegel tent or there is this tradition
Absolutely.
now of those cabarets in those tents where they build a show like a La Ronde or a
Yes.
whatever,
Yeah.
and it plays for months, and people go to it who are both comedy and theater
Yeah.
and circus fans, and it was an early version of those
Yeah.
sort of shows, but
Yeah.
with that sort of charismatic front man of Paul McDermott.
Yeah, all three of them were a little bit ahead of the curve with their kind of
Yeah.
next projects. Mosh was ahead of the curve. Richard did that show about the future of technology
Hmm.
that was once again ahead of the curve. And Tim Ferguson with Don't Forget Your Toothbrush, uh, parodying what a host was, and undercutting it was way ahead of the curve,
Yeah,
like that
totally.
was it's a precursor to even something like Gleason now, but it was done before anyone knew you could do that. And it's like, why is Tim acting like a host? He's like, he's not. He's pushing people over. He's playing the role kind of thing. So um
Yeah, I was very disappointed. Well, Don't Forget Your Toothbrush did work for a while. It worked
yeah,
quite well
yeah,
for a while.
yeah.
But I did a pilot. The first pilot that I ever did was for a pilot of a Tonight Show that Tim Ferguson was going to host,
Right.
called Girl Friday
Oh
was the name of the
yeah,
show.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so it was filmed in the Channel 9 studios. The very famous, it was the
Yeah,
one that, the address used to come up at the end of Hey Hey, it's Saturday, where you could
yeah,
send your stuff in, right?
yeah.
And it was those studios. So for a young kid starting out in comedy to be there, it was pretty incredible. And um, yeah, I was involved in the pilot of that show, and I remember one day going back to my apartment in Carlton that I shared with my sister, and my mum had been staying with us, and uh, she said, "I've just been on the phone to Tim Ferguson for half an hour," and
Yeah,
so Tim had rung, because this is the old days of a landline, and Tim
yeah,
had rung to give an update. This was a couple of months afterwards, and just this sort of, we haven't heard anything yet, checking in, which is delightful to do, by the way, for Tim to
yeah,
even be making those calls. But I think he was on one of those contracts where he was just locked in a room at Channel 9 with
it
nothing to
was.
do. So
Yeah,
he was making some phone calls
yeah,
to like thank people, and had ended up just talking to my mum on the phone for half an hour. But she
yeah,
was quite thrilled by that. So
yeah, yeah. And
that
he's so
kind of made her
charming.
feel like I was, starting out on a proper career in show business, I think. So well
Yeah.
done, Tim.
And talking to Tim as well is his voice, the way he speaks is as handsome as he looks.
Well, they all have, were generous in helping me out in some way. So Tim, cast me on that pilot of Girl Friday, and
Yeah.
followed up and talked to my mum. Richard used to have it was called Mouthing Off or something. It was a
Yeah.
it was a kind of, a panel news, current affairsy sort of comedy,
Yeah.
chat thing on in the early days of the Comedy Channel or Foxtel or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't. I don't know if it was called that or not. I might
That's
be remembering that incorrectly, but
does
I
sound
did that
familiar.
a bunch of times.
Yeah.
But the story that I wanted to tell to bring us back to where we started was
Oh,
Paul.
well, yeah. Well, Paul was interesting to work with on Question Everything because he's very funny. He's an incredibly private person, but when he talks to share, he talks.
Mm,
And it is when he came in that day, um, and we had to get stuff ready for the show. Uh, I was in his room for 70 minutes while he talked about some stuff.
mm.
And it's really a fascinating moment in your life where you're, yep, oh yeah, oh okay, yeah, and then finding that moment, we go, so what's the artwork that you've brought in?
Yeah.
Because we're running out of time. And then I think we asked him for like three pieces, and he honestly brought in 45. And suddenly they're all spread out, and they're all brilliant, and they're all fascinating. And suddenly I'm having to make a decision on what we're going to use, and then we have to scan them. And people are saying to me, "Why are you getting this to me now?" It's like, mate, you, you're lucky you're getting it now.
I could explain to you, but it'd take years.
Yeah, I don't have 70 minutes. So, but uh, yeah, he's 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 an interesting character, and he's an interesting guy. Once he started talking about some stuff, it was like it just didn't feel like it would have been impolite to, hey mate, we don't have time for that. Also, I didn't expect it to go that long.
Well, I was doing an episode of Good News Week. So the first thing that I really did on like a major TV network was be a guest on a television program called Good News Week, and
On the
I
ABC.
on the ABC.
Yeah,
Back in the very early days of Good News Week, Pam Swain, no longer with us, rest in
yeah,
peace. The beautiful Pam Swain had identified me somewhere, had seen come and like these, Ted Robinson and that entire crew were very big on the idea of they would go to the comedy festivals, they would go and see shows, they would
yeah,
scout people. Something we tried to do also when we were doing Question Everything was like between us see so many shows,
yeah.
try to see who was out there and who was doing what. And it's a great pleasure to be able to do that and have an excuse to do that also because there is such incredible new work always being created by people that you haven't heard of or haven't seen enough.
Hmm.
And people improve so quickly too that if you take your eye off someone for a couple of years and then check back in, sometimes you can be like, what the fuck just happened?
No, yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I've seen a few of those recently where you're just like, oh, that's right. I forgot that people keep getting better
yeah,
or at least have the capacity to do so.
yeah,
They don't
yeah,
always,
yeah. It
but
can work in reverse.
yes, that's right. So anyway, I don't. Pam Swain apparently had spotted me at something, and they had lobbied to give me an opportunity on Good News Week. And I guess at this point, I think maybe I'd done a few of them, but not like so many that. I mean, I became a member of that sort of the regulars on that panel to an extent that when they did both of their farewell shows on both networks, I was invited to be part of
Hmm.
the big. They would always do those big panels of the like I don't know however many like 9 or 12 or whatever like guests that would be on a big final episode, but I would always be included in that. So to kind of I was within that universe, but not like a key player within that universe. Very much we get invited to a Marvel Avengers style big battle scene, but
Oh
I'm not
yeah.
necessarily getting my own spin-off movie at this point, right?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, you just remind me. We did
Yeah.
a Christmas special for uh, Good News Week, and that was when Tim's MS was becoming
Right.
prominent, and that's another kind of moment where I was paired with Tim, so we were doing auto cue stuff together, and
Oh yeah.
I was kind of he was resting on me kind of thing, and that's a that's a moment as well.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Like I mean it's so this is one of the great things about being in Australia is that it starts out you think, oh wow, these people are untouchable. I can never imagine what it's like, and then it turns out it's actually a really small place, and we all know each other, and
Yeah.
it's really easy.
Yeah.
Access is really easy, and it's fine. And you'll run into everybody, and
Yeah.
they're all just dickheads like you. It turns out,
Yeah.
and
Well,
so
you know what's great is Richard and his wife moved into Surrey Hills, and I literally last night he's been overseas. I texted him, I called him. I said, "Are you at home?" And he said, "Yeah, I am. Why don't you pop over?" And so I just knocked on the door because I was at the front door.
yeah, well there you go. See,
Yeah,
and so I was thinking about Paul a lot in
yeah,
relation to Bondi.
yeah,
Without wanting to dox Paul, Paul spent most of like his life living in Bondi.
yeah,
And when I was moving to Sydney in the year 2000, I was doing an episode of Good News Week, and I was talking about the fact I was just talking off air about the fact that I was having to move to Sydney in a couple of weeks, and I hadn't worked out where I was going to live yet. But I was thinking I'd probably end up in Newtown. That was basically the extent of the conversation that was had. And at the end of the show, Paul McDermott, who I honestly barely knew at this
hmm,
point, other than had grown up idolizing him. The first time I used a fake ID was to go and see comedy. I remember on the Lions Youth of the Year in Tasmania, we snuck out of the people who were billeting us so that we could go down to a local pub and sneak in to watch the Doug Anthony All Stars. Like, I mean, they had been so
that's so
huge in my
funny.
imagination, and
Yeah,
and so Paul came up to me at the end of the show and he said, "Hey, you know." I'm going to be away for a couple of weeks, and I have an apartment in Bondi. If you want to like stay there for a couple of weeks while you're trying to, find somewhere to live,
hmm,
then yeah, you're welcome to do that. Which I just thought was, I mean, it blew my mind how
yeah,
incredibly generous that was. I barely
yeah,
knew him, at that
yeah,
point, and he was to me seemed like such a huge figure, and the idea that he was just willing to offer that.
yeah,
Particularly Paul, who seemed
yeah,
so possessive of his privacy,
yeah,
etc. And so I took him up on the offer. And I'm so pleased that I did because I always say, well, I went to like I lived in Paul's place in Bondi, overlooking Bondi Beach for for 2 weeks, and then I didn't leave. I moved
yeah,
500 meters up the road,
yeah,
and my first ever apartment I had by myself was in Lucius Street in Bondi, and then Amy and I had the place in North Bondi that was kind of
yeah,
our home for a very long time.
yeah,
Charlie and I were talking on our podcast the other day about the fact that we wouldn't have our Everyone Relax network and all our podcasts if it weren't for Bondi, because Charlie and my friendship was born and forged while we were both living in Bondi, and
yeah.
we would see each other every day, and we would go for a run or have a beer or watch something together or whatever it would be. We would I would get back from work, and I'd find him and Amy like stoned on the couch uh, playing Guess Who, but like based on personality types rather than does your guy
Yeah,
look like a pedophile?
yeah.
No, click click click.
Click, click, click. That'd get rid of a lot.
I remember having like a New Year's Eve party on the roof of that apartment block where we watched the sunrise the next day over the ocean. And a couple of years ago when I was looking for a new place to live, I, really, because I'd lived in the eastern suburbs of Sydney for 20 odd years and probably visited Bondi every day or every second day for most of that time. I considered moving back to Bondi. I looked at a
Yeah,
couple of places that were on the beach there, and I really did. It was like, well, maybe my next move is to come back to this place that is so special to me. And as I saw those images initially, like start to emerge, it's like it's such it's yeah, I've talked about this a lot in the last couple of days with friends of mine who are still in Bondi. I had close friends who are like a friend who was in the ocean surfing, while it was all happening, like as
yeah.
in, people like that who are so close to it or had just been there or were there or were nearby. Luckily, at the moment, it seems like no one I know has been injured or killed in it, but like so many people have been, and it's so tragic. And
Yeah, it's
but yeah,
really
just
saddening. Like you just,
yeah,
I've just felt really sad
yeah.
since everything
Well,
was
because
happening.
that place to me just means such peace and joy in my life. Like it
Hmm.
is the time of my life where, we were hanging out with friends every weekend, just, enjoying being young and being out on your own. And like, I mean, what a place Bondi. I mean, Charlie and I would always say, we're just like, we live here. Like,
Yeah,
we'd
yeah.
run along that beach with everybody. And that was the essence of that suburb's always been, it's so full of tourists and travelers and all those things. It's quite anonymous, but it's also quite a community. And there's been people, yeah, even now with all the, million, $20 million apartments, when I first moved to Bondi, the entirety of Campbell Parade, which is that, like, the beach strip, was houses, basically.
Yeah,
People's
yeah.
houses. Like, they used to be, and there's still a couple of people who must have
Hanging
been getting
on.
millions and millions of dollars of offers who are like, nah, you
No.
can take me out of here when I die, but I'm living
Yeah,
in this house by the beach until then.
yeah.
And I love that about that suburb. And yes, it also has the whole, influence, a high-end celebrity, but that's great as well. It's all
Hmm.
of those things. And it's all mixed in together. And, it feels like such a attack on what is so, the thing about Bondi that is so great, that it is one of the world's most beautiful beaches, and it is 15 minutes from the heart of, you know, the CBD. And it's rare that you can have something like that. Like, it's rare in the world that you have things like that. And the symbolism of Bondi Beach, it's just that iconic imagery of Australia. It's where Bondi Rescue is. That it is. I did message a whole bunch of my friends, like on the night, people that I knew lived in Bondi, including my old weed dealer.
Yeah, yeah. Good to check in. Here's hoping you were high that day. Just on the lounge.
But I did not check in with you
Well,
because
well, I know why as well, and
yeah.
I reckon and even of 70% of the people that checked in with me all started with the same thing, which is I'm just checking in, but it happened at a beach, so I feel pretty safe in the knowledge that you were nowhere near.
Oh man, like the amount of times when I lived at the beach that I tried to get you to come to the beach and I couldn't get you to come there.
Uh,
I was like, if you've just gone to the beach by yourself, like
listen,
randomly when I'm not around, then you deserve whatever happened to you
yeah,
today.
yeah, fair enough too. You,
Yeah.
you did do your best, but it's it's I probably actually go down there more than you realize because I'm always catching up with people.
Yeah.
Like I'm not down there often, but more often than people would realize, and catching up on the cafes and just seeing people, etc. Um, it's funny. Um, on Facebook, things come up where they say just mark yourself as safe, and
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and I looked at the area. So they kind of give you an area of if you've been in this area, you should. And I'd actually
Mm,
that day been
mm.
in Randwick. So
Yeah.
and I looked, and I'd had enough messages that because you're extremely cognizant of not being someone who's trying to graft themselves onto
Yeah. Insert yourself into the narrative.
absolutely,
Yeah,
and
it was interesting for me. Sorry, without wanting,
no,
because I know your bit's probably going to be more fun than what I'm about to say, but
absolutely.
it's was interesting not consuming this on social media
Oh yes, yeah, yeah,
because traditionally I always would have gone to social media immediately, but I don't trust anything on social media anymore. So because I'm off it and because I don't trust it, it just felt like I'm going to get as much bad information there as I would get good information.
yeah,
And to follow something from a distance with a little bit more peace, like,
yeah,
from being removed from the situation, not being caught up with it in a way that you can't, because so many people in those scenarios, I think, are like, I've got to help get the information out there. Whereas sometimes the best help you can be if you're not a professional journalist or emergency services person is to get out of the way,
yeah,
not get,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
in that information sense. Like, I mean, there
yeah,
were genuine real life heroes who like chose to not get out of the way and to put themselves in the way of, fire and harm and those sort of things. And I mean, I just think that is one of the most, like, I'm still overwhelmed by people's capacity to run towards danger.
Yeah, yeah.
people's capacity to put down what they are doing and saying, people need my help and I'm going to help, even if it like might result in me being personally harmed or killed or whatever it might be. I think that is absolutely stunning and incredible.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I did the same thing as you. I just went to news
Yeah.
pages and kind of kept across it that way. I was listening to the Lamestream guys, and I'm
Yeah.
glad, they talked about yeah, I think if you want to hear like a proper breakdown of it, the episode that they put up is incredibly thoughtful. And they also made me grateful for not going through social media because people started reporting things that weren't true. Like they were saying that there was an early initial report of it wasn't just happening in Bondi, it was happening elsewhere. And then the reports of this guy going to one of the alleged gunmen going to a certain school, and they showed the school and the person who runs the school, and that person had to leave their house because they were
Yeah.
being targeted. So it made me very grateful to have avoided all of that.
Oh yeah,
And
I know comedic, like if you can find anything comedic about any of this, which is incredibly difficult to do, but on a comedic, so the Lamestream guys had released like their Monday morning podcast that they record
yeah,
on a Sunday. And so it had been recorded previously to any of it happening. And in it, they were saying, they were like, this is our second last one for the year. We'll see you again on Thursday for our final podcast of the year, blah, blah, blah. And I was just listening to that, just going, no, I
no,
reckon you're gonna do another one today. And then
yeah.
later on that day, another podcast pops up, and I was like,
Yeah.
yep, no, that's what I thought.
Guess what? The news
Yeah.
never rests.
Nah.
So anyway, so this thing on Facebook popped up, and I really debated putting safe because I it
Hmm.
just felt a bit gauche. And then I thought, you know what? I've had enough text messages from
Yeah.
people around, so I clicked
Just
on it.
let people know for other
Just
people's. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So anyway, so I clicked on it, and then uh, the beautiful Beth Marshall, who's a big comedy fan in Adelaide, who goes to all shows, very supportive. She wrote something very nice, and then some guy who I went to primary school with has just had a fucking crack at me.
Oh,
Oh,
great.
how
Oh,
generous of
great.
you, And I looked at it, and it was like I wrote a really thoughtful response, and then I deleted it, and then I wrote "Go fuck yourself," and I
And then you
deleted
deleted
that,
it?
and
Yeah,
then I
good.
just blocked him because I was
Yeah.
like, "Why don't I even let this guy
Uh,
be my friend? I didn't even like him in
yes.
primary school."
Right.
You fucking idiot, Hamilton. Anyway. So it was just this funny thing of debating something for like when I say debating something, sitting here for like 10, 15 minutes
Yeah.
doing other things, going, oh, should I do this? Oh, fuck it. I'll do it. And then, you're like, go fuck yourself.
I know, but isn't it? I don't blame you. There is a part of you that is just being so human in that situation.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not advocating for people to abdicate their responsibilities of like being a member of society.
Yeah.
But what our perceived responsibilities are have been so ratcheted up by the internet.
Yeah.
Like we didn't think that we could do anything about things that happened a long way away from us, previously, partly just because we couldn't.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we could not see them, and terrible things were done because we could not see them. So I'm not saying that, I'm not arguing for everything to be darkness, and that is necessarily better either. There are great things that have happened from light being shone upon evil deeds, right?
Right.
But this idea that, like, the idea of being safe is good for people who might be affected by the thing, right?
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
were in a nearby suburb and there is potential that maybe it's spreading somewhere else and that information is getting around, at least you can see that there is some reasonable need for that. You
Yeah.
might be in a danger zone,
Yeah.
therefore it's good that you are alerted that you might be in a danger zone, or that people might be worried that you're in a danger zone. It is good that you have a way to be able to tell people that you are not.
Yeah.
Both of those things seem pretty reasonable to me.
Yeah.
But if I'm in Canberra or Melbourne or Western Australia or whatever when it's happening. In a way, knowing about it immediately can be, and to maybe even take it away from like what we're talking about here, just about anything, which is you don't always have to be caught up in the day to day of it or
Yeah.
consuming it all at once. There's no
Yeah.
reason that you need no. There's no. It's rare that the world is going to be just stopped randomly and they're going to be okay. Like we're going to kill you if you can't answer these 5 general knowledge questions. Like,
Right.
and it was a particularly bad few days just in a Venn diagram of like some things in my world, which was that Rob Reiner had obviously died in such
Oh,
a horribly tragic way. Rob Reiner and his wife had
oh
been
my
both
Lord.
killed in
Like
such a
a
horribly tragic way.
like a real kind of 1-2 punch, Sunday to Monday, very, very different things. And you know, once again, we don't know Rob Reiner, but we grew up in his films, and and his acting, and he was just in the latest season of The Bear, and the guy that made When Harry Met Sally and Stand By Me to discover that had such a horrible death at
Well, I
that
mean,
age
like
was
for
awful.
me, and I think this is true because I go back and forward about it, but I think, to be honest, I think that The Princess Bride is my favorite
Yes,
movie of all time.
yes,
And, I love the William Goldman script. I love the original book, which is, different to the script, both written by William Goldman. The
yeah,
original book is based on, I use quotation marks, a whole bunch of ancient texts that were found and compiled by
yeah,
William Goldman.
yeah,
Yeah, except that he also wrote and
yeah,
compiled. And it's so good. It's
yeah,
like such a complicated and intriguing thing. The movie, though, is also really wonderful and fantastic. And the performances across the board, incredible, iconic, had just such a run of like incredible iconic films in the 90s. And when I first heard what happened to him, and by the way, I have said this to you, and I don't say this in any other way other than just, isn't it funny? Isn't it horrible how sometimes you just get such an immediate instinct for what has happened? Like when I heard he was stabbed, my
yeah,
immediate instinct was that it would be a family member because tragically it happened in the AFL to Phil Walsh,
yeah,
the Adelaide the Adelaide coach, and it feels so personal, that
yeah,
way of dying, and I can't imagine the enormous tragedy it must be to not only, I mean, the tragedy of losing their lives, but the tragedy for that family for the remaining members of that family,
yeah,
that anytime there is a killing within a family, I just think the double complex, it's just like the horrible loss of both the parents, but also the brother, right?
yeah,
For the family, or how they deal with that, or how they support the brother, or how they don't support the brother. It was just awful. And then I won't, friends of mine, not myself, but friends who are close to us, and it is their place to tell their stories if they would like to. But there was an Australian actress by the name of Rachel Carpani who was on, Home and Away and McLeod's
yeah,
Daughters, but a bunch of American things as well, who tragically died very young and was very close to a bunch of people that we know. And so those 3 stories all sort of just felt like it was this. I mean, we've talked, I don't know, is this just that thing of getting older? And, Steve Martin talks about it in Born Standing Up, doesn't he? Which is that idea of stand up comedy, it being harder to joke about cancer once you know a bunch of people who've died of cancer, and
yeah,
how it gets harder as you get older.
yeah.
I do, yeah. I don't know. Like what I mean, I've just like dumped a whole bunch of stuff there without any sort of, you know,
Specific question, but it is
no,
that like there is the you the privilege of getting older is that you have to take on the responsibility of the lives of the people around you who don't get to continue. And
yeah,
but these 3 things that could have hit at any age, the things that just
yeah,
happened recently. So
yeah,
I
true.
think I think they're kind of different in that regard. But yeah, it's and look, I can transition this into something that's a little bit more fun for you as well, because I have to tell you, up until Sunday mid-afternoon, I was in the best mood I've been in all year.
No, okay, so yeah, great. So tell me why. This is good because we need
Yeah,
something fun to end on, I think.
yeah,
We
yeah,
need-
yeah, yeah. This is shit. This is terrible. Wasn't that awful?
Yeah,
That person's
yeah,
complex. Have a good
okay,
day.
yeah.
Dad. Oh, there he goes. Um, that was our producer coming in
Oh,
to tell
oh
us
my God.
time to bring it up. So,
Oh, yeah. Okay. Before you get to your good thing, I'm going to do a little quick thing, which is this. Gatesy and I went to see TV on the radio,
oh yeah, yeah,
and it was so good. It was
yeah,
the final night of their tour,
yeah.
and there was a real feeling of
Final
like
night of
not
the Australian tour or the whole tour?
of the whole tour,
Oh, great.
and there was a real feeling of like maybe we'll be back together and maybe we never will again in the air, which gave it just a incredible. But he played. He he is. So we went to dinner beforehand,
Yeah.
and he was telling me about an AI songwriting app,
Oh, yeah.
and he said that he had downloaded it just to not because he wants to use AI songwriting. In fact, I think he, like most musicians, is terrified about
Yeah.
AI songwriting.
I bet he got this from Frank Woodley. Because when I went to his
Yeah,
Gatesy's big
party.
party, his 53rd birthday party, two
Yeah,
months after he turned 53,
yeah,
which was an incredible night. But I ended up in a long conversation with Frank Woodley and Paul Horan talking about AI, and Frank was talking me through this AI app where you can come up with a song and then say make it grungy or make it pop.
yeah. Well, Gatesy was so he had to downloaded obviously whatever this was, and he had like a 1 month free trial. So he was
Yeah,
like, "Well, I'm going to show you while I've got this like free trial or whatever it is."
yeah,
And so, or he paid for him, whatever it is. Like there was
yeah,
some reason,
yeah.
and I, to be honest, did not even want to hear it. I don't want.
No.
I don't. I don't actually think I even want to get involved in it. But he was like, I just want to show you like how good it is at it already. And so he literally put in a few prompts just while he was sitting there at the table.
Hmm.
And one about you and Limo and like us, and we were eating tofu. So it was just about eating tofu and you and Limo and like and then and like a style of music. And then he like sent me this thing and I listened to it. And like I'm not saying it's amazing. Like it's not like I
Hmm.
would put it on to have a listen to. But fuck me. It's like, it's like top 20% of things that are being made.
Right, right.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's that good at being able to just for any of that music that is not for the purpose of being art and is just for the purpose of if you were like doing a TV show,
Yeah.
like a reality TV show where you just have incidental music and you're like, I want right now this scene to be about they're scared that this person is about to die and you want
Yeah.
to get this like perfect bit of music that like has some sort of lyric about death or whatever instead of having to go to the Smith's back catalog or whatever and pay like all these performing rights. You can go to a computer and go in early death, it's on a Tuesday, dark themed, blah blah blah, spit it out and like put
Yeah.
that music over the top. You're like, oh, it's immediately gonna just
Yeah.
do that now. I think that
Yeah.
is it
Well,
was quite
the
terrifying.
mate, it's yeah, I'm really torn when it comes to, technology post-COVID has flattened
Mm.
art, and it's
Yes.
there's so many brilliant artists that we're not getting to hear, especially now that there's these AI bands that are squeezing the algorithm because they can churn out a new album every 3 weeks, and it's you know,
Well, that's
I,
what I mean. So that the point I kind of wanted to make was that like it was incredible to me that like there was this AI thing that could immediately do this thing to order.
yeah,
But then there was this other thing, this band, TV on the radio, that are this incredible band that like make
yeah,
this non-traditional, pop rock art
yeah,
music,
yeah,
but just delivered so compellingly. They look different to any other band. They play differently to any other band. And
yeah,
there was they don't play that often. There must be some internal tensions that mean they don't play as often as because they are incredible.
Yeah.
And there was the last night of the tour, and there was clearly some shit going on within the band, and people are on different pages and whatever.
Yeah.
And it was magnificent because of that.
Yeah.
And all that. And
Yeah.
you can't program that
Yeah.
into a computer and just get it to spit out what you wanted from the night.
Have you seen any of the have you been watching any of the Radiohead shows in overseas?
I bet it's funny. So without going too much into this other thing that we have mentioned but not spoken about,
Yeah.
the person who's close to me who is like not well,
Yeah.
that we Radiohead is kind of such a huge shared thing,
Experience. Yeah.
for us, and so it's been incredibly difficult to engage with it
Yeah, I
because
get
of that.
that. Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like it's just
I feel that way as
so
well.
filled with you can't separate one from the other, and it just releases all which sometimes is okay. Sometimes it's good when you are going through a really like big emotional sad time to have a thing that gives you a controlled way to let that emotion out, but there
Yeah.
is no way at the moment to sustain that into anything other than it being just like a trauma dump for all that emotion.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I feel
Without
the
wanting,
same way.
and I kind
Yeah.
of need to move on a little bit from this conversation because I don't want to go into it too much. But
No.
that is, I would love to, but kind of at the moment I can't because of that reason.
If it's any consolation, sometimes I'm watching stuff and my arm throbs, and it's the arm that our friend has punched me in
Yeah.
when they get excited and a song comes up.
Yeah.
I've got this thing. Anyway, it's
Yeah.
just the reason I bring it up is there's just been a couple of times where Johnny Greenwood, who is a genius, has just hit a bung note because they haven't played songs for a long time, and you see Tom York kind of looking around and laughing, or having to restart a song, or he'd been sick, so his voice, he couldn't quite. They had to restart, no surprises, kind of thing, and I kind of I like that. Do you know what I mean? It's there's something there's something so real about it that it's this band that's all about perfection. You have a bang, especially in a song like Reckoner or something, and it's just funny and it makes it feel immediate as well.
I've gone back to my notebooks. So like physical notebooks.
Oh, yes, yes.
I've never gone away from them.
Can I show you something?
Yeah,
Sorry,
of
I've
course.
been meaning to tell you. So,
Yeah.
I always use little books like this that are
Yes.
normally black. And for years, when I pull them out, like without fail, people go, "Oh, have you brought your passport?" And it's just been for decades. So I got a red one. Anyway, when I was up at Good Chat, I pulled it out and someone said, "Oh, have you got your Italian passport?" And I was like, "Oh, for God's sakes."
Mamma mia.
Hey. Anyway, I thought you'd appreciate that.
I do, because I've gone back to my physical notebooks. Not that I'd
Yeah.
ever gone fully away from them, but
No,
now I think
writing
more
by
than
hand
ever,
is,
yes. But also, I think it'll be important to be able to see and show you're working.
yes.
The
Yes, yes.
idea that something was, I was talking to, we mentioned on last time we chatted about the fact that somebody had asked me to, help them a little bit with their show.
Yeah.
And so I was having a conversation with that person the other day just about, the philosophies of, how to like write new material for a show versus whether they could incorporate older material
Yeah.
in the show. Like this is going to be their first kind of like big show of this sort of way. Should they be putting in like pre-established bits, or whether it's better to just write to the rest of the theme of the show and etc. And so we were having that conversation and talking about the various pros and cons, but I was also talking about the idea that of revisiting something through the eyes of where you're at now, or what your different perspective might be. Why did I start talking about this? There was a reason I started talking about this fucking
I think
thing.
you were talking about writing in books.
Oh, writing in your notebooks.
Physical
And I
media.
said, so there is an earlier version of what your thought might be, but it might not end up being the fully realized version later, right?
Yeah.
And there is an REM song called It's Been a Long Day, or A Long Day, it's called, or something like
Right.
that. It was on one of their greatest hits albums, but it was a B-side early on.
Yeah.
And if you hear it, it's a great song. But the reason it's a great song is it sounds a lot like one of their other songs, It's the End of the World as We Know It, and I Feel
Right.
Fine. And the reason for that is that they basically just took the bits of that song and then added like
Yeah.
some other things and turned it into a completely different song.
Yeah.
I love that both of those versions exist, because
Yeah.
to me, I'm like, oh, here's this earlier version, which is still in its own way a good and interesting song. Like,
Yeah.
I often will, like, because it's not as overplayed as It's the End of the World as We Know It, maybe there's a part of me that enjoys that song more than I enjoy It's the End of the World, just because of it hasn't been ruined by being included in every bit of popular culture or whatever, but still has a lot of the same ingredients that I like about the song.
Yeah.
But I like that both of them exist. And so you can have that earlier version of something and then show you're working. Like, go,
Mm.
AI has no working. So it's never
Yeah.
going to show the working. You're never going to be able to say REM came up with The End of the World as We Know It because they originally had this other song and then they did this other thing. And you can see the process. And I think seeing the process is going to be more and more important in a
Yeah.
world where you can immediately conjure almost anything that you can imagine.
Yeah.
The process itself is going to become more and more interesting. Someone getting a bung note or a earlier version of a song, or seeing something develop, or a piece of work or a routine or whatever it might be develop, I
Yeah.
think is going to be more compelling and more interesting than necessarily even the finished product.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're right. And being able to, I think it's interesting. You are seeing people look for that and want to know about it as
Yeah.
well. So I last time we spoke, I talked about how much fun I had up in
Yes.
Brisbane and Cairns, and up at Good Chat, and they were just really fun gigs. But I had my final gig for the year
Yes.
on Saturday, and it was Carl Barron asked me to do support for him, and he had sold out 10 Newcastle Civic Theatre shows.
10.
10, about 1,500, 1,600. So he
Yeah.
sold out 10 of
Per
them
show.
per
I
show.
would like to, I'd like to sell out. If I go to Newcastle to do the Civic Theatre, I'd like to sell out one.
Yeah,
I'd be very happy to sell out one.
yeah.
He sold out 10 and
He
had to
sold,
add an extra show.
had to add a bonus show.
Yeah.
And so his bonus show was at the
At the
Newcastle
Newcastle
Entertainment.
Comedy Club, 90
No,
people down at the
90
Newcastle
people.
Comedy Club. Yeah.
Yeah, and he wanted me to open for him just to make sure the crowd was settled. The Newcastle Entertainment Centre,
I
and
did 12 shows in Newcastle this year in that 90-seat room at the Newcastle Comedy Club. He's done 11 shows, 10 at the,
10
the
at the
Civic
Civic.
Theatre,
Yeah,
and then one extra one.
yeah. Which was his bonus show was 6,000 people.
Yeah. 6,000.
6,000.
He's the Taylor Swift of Australian comedy.
Oh,
And
he's
in fact,
phenomenal.
I think proportionally, if it'd be rare that anyone in the world has the level of like per capita success.
Hmm.
If you measured comedy on a per capita basis, Carl Barron would almost be the most successful comedian on the entire planet, I would have thought.
Yeah, yeah, he is a machine. And so
Yeah.
so anyway, the reason I wanted to bring it up was a little bit less about my experience. His manager Artie Lang, who I've known for a long time,
Good
you
man,
know,
Artie.
great guy. And he was just discussing,
Great comedy promoter too. Like
yeah,
he's one of those guys that just has had now a 40-year career of
yeah,
like just being an excellent comedy promoter. Got
excellent.
excellent acts and just like knows what he's doing.
And he was sort of saying, I need this, or but can you do this? And I just said to him, whatever you need, I'll do it.
Mm.
That's absolutely fine. And when I was, and Carl's so funny. You're talking to Carl before the show, and at one point he says, "Oh, I should stop talking to you so you can prep." And I'm like, I'm good. I'd worked out what I was going to do,
Mm.
and uh, I was so calm and so at peace on stage. And because in my head, I was
So
like, when am I going to
uh,
perform to 6,000 people again? I might not perform to 6,000 people for the next 3 years. So I better,
combined,
yeah,
yeah,
that's what
that's
I
right.
mean. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I was so present
So
in,
how did it work? Did he introduce you, or did
no,
you just walk
Artie
out?
did. No,
Artie introduced you.
Artie.
Okay. Oh,
So
just on a voiceover. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I went and they said you don't have to do a sound check, but I went and did a sound
Hmm.
check because
Yep.
and it was a bit echoey,
Yeah.
but it was good. I got a sense of the stage. I got a sense of the bigger the room, you kind of got to
Yeah.
give a breath to let it go to the back and then
Uh,
come to the front
yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Artie introduced me as Carl's very special guest. And that audience was, and they had been lining, I saw people lining up 2 hours beforehand.
Oh, yeah.
And
Okay.
so, and they
Uh-huh.
were locked in. They were really, very generous. Um, and I did I very specifically did a give me some noise up the back, give me noise on the side,
Oh, yeah.
give me
Good.
noise in
Yeah.
the middle at the front, and then very specifically went into Carl and I were backstage discussing how exciting it is to perform to such a
Yeah.
large
Great.
audience, which is
Yeah.
for people
Great.
listening is a subconscious way of saying, the guy that you've come to see that
Mm.
you love, I'm friends
Yeah.
with
We're
him,
friends.
and
Yeah.
we're
We're friends.
backstage.
Yeah.
And then I could segue straight into because when you start, you do some pretty weird and tough gigs. Like when I first started, the hardest gig I ever did, and I pulled out Hens Night.
Yeah. Nice.
And that's
Good.
such an old routine, but it was perfect for that audience because it also segued me into material before anyone realized, oh, no, now he's doing stand up.
Yeah.
So,
Brilliant. And
yeah.
so were people still coming in while you were performing though? Because in an
Well,
audience that size, part of the reason that, obviously Carl wanted a support was that there might be some,
yeah.
it's a huge crowd to get into a room.
Yeah, and like we started 10 minutes late because and they've been trying to get them in.
Mm.
So I was prepared for all of that. They were in. Like if anyone was coming in, it
Yeah,
was right up
nice.
the back. They were
Okay.
like that I did not see
And so
anyone.
really you just got to do a gig in front of 6,000 people.
I just got to do a gig in front of 6,000 people, and the reason I was there was probably superfluous. They could have started with Carl.
What bit went best? What did they like the most? What did Carl Barron's audience of enjoy the most of your material, do you think?
Oh, that's a good question. I they seem to like they seem to like the Apollo 13 joke in
Oh
its
yeah.
in its latest incarnation, especially the reaction to
uh,
the way it plays out now.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so they seem to really get into that. But anyway, the thing that I thought would be more interesting for you was that, so I brought Carl on and then I kind of watched him from backstage for
Yeah.
and listened, but watched
So,
him.
well, last time I saw Carl perform
Mm,
live, I'm absolutely going to go to this tour
mm,
at at some stage. There's like a whole bunch of shows. I mean, there's like you know he's doing so many shows everywhere. Like
yeah,
it's
hopefully
going
he'll
to
get
be
in.
well. You know what? This is one of those ones
Yeah,
where I'd be
calling
happy to
Polly.
ask for a free ticket. Yeah, that's right. Normally, I'm like, I'll pay for a ticket. I'll go and see my friends. I'll pay for a
Yeah.
ticket.
No, I
I
need
think
to get
Carl's,
in.
I think Carl's fine, and also I don't think I can get a ticket if I
Yeah,
try to pay for one. So
yeah,
I'm going to have
exactly.
to. So, um, I saw him in LA. I mean, I guess it's probably a decade back now. Like
Yeah,
maybe that was the last time I saw him. So he was doing a gig in LA, and it was full of Australians, obviously expats who
yeah,
and it was incredible. Just
yeah.
brilliant exhibition of just relatable observational stand-up comedy. But what's it like now? Tell me, what were your observations?
Well, the thing that I found so when we were backstage, he was talking about when he feels like a gig is going well, it just feels like he's having a conversation with the audience, which was also which I took on stage with me because
Yeah, that's
because
good.
also the sound system is so perfect.
Yes,
It's
you
like
don't need to
yeah,
project as much.
remember when it was okay for people to go and see Louis C.K. and we saw that show in
Mm.
LA a long time ago before allegations came out, so we're in the clear.
Yeah.
And
It's okay. It's all right.
remember,
We also went to a party that P Diddy threw. Like
yeah, it
again,
was
it
fine.
was fine.
Yeah, we were right up the back. Like we weren't too close to these people. But oh dear. But the uh what was yeah, so that Louis C.K. Remember the
Yeah,
sound was so perfect in a 2,500 seater. It felt intimate, and so it did feel intimate to perform to 6,000 people because your voice was so crisp and so clear that you could just kind of talk like that. Oh,
it's.
and it
I
was
mean,
a game changer, you know,
having seen Kendrick Lamar a couple of weeks ago now, uh,
the
I
Carl
was
Barron of
worried.
hip hop.
I mean, in a way, I actually think that there is something to be said about that.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
Carl's never going to get involved in a comedy rap battle with anybody. I don't think. Like, I
Oh,
mean, imagine like if Carl just started calling it Husey.
oh mate, it'd be amazing. It'd be weird, but it'd be amazing. And Husey would love it.
Yeah, oh, Husey would be absolutely
Yeah.
happy to be involved. So, uh, there was something about the so last time I saw Kendrick, it was in the entertainment center.
Mm,
It's one of the best shows that I've ever seen. He's come out on this new tour. Now he's like a stadium act, right? Like, so
mm,
I saw him at Amy Stadium, which is probably like 30,000 people or
mm,
plus, right? Like, and I was worried about, oh, well, what's that going to mean? Like, rap in an outdoor arena, sometimes, like, you can lose that sound quality.
mm,
He, the first half of his first song, he does from backstage. He's
mm,
not even on stage yet. And it's just him. Most of it is just him. Like there are parts of it that are essentially beat poetry. There's
mm,
barely like any music at all. And it's just his vocal control. And the thing that I was most interested in is that he never actually pushes his voice. This has
mm,
come up a lot recently, which is Tony Martin said it to me. I don't know if I mentioned this to you, which was that the best way to be able to do an accent or a voice is to turn the volume up. He says, if you want to know how to do an accent or different voices, go into a space with like your recorder or whatever, turn the volume or the reverb right up, and then
mm,
do the voices quietly. He said, if you
mm.
can do it quietly, you have so much more range in your voice and you can do so many
Ah,
different accents and so many different things. When you start to push it, it becomes much more like a limited range of what it is that you can do. And it turns
right.
out that like a lot
Huh.
of like singers, like metal singers and stuff who do all that soul falsetto and that high metal singing, what they actually do is they're not singing it that loud.
Yeah.
The microphone's really loud, and then they
Yeah,
sing
right.
it quite softly, but being able to control it
Yeah,
into this like really good microphone, and you get the effect of it being
right.
sung really loud, which makes
Right.
so much sense when you
Yes.
you think about it like that. And then when you play one of those venues and the sound is so good, you suddenly realize you can be quite intimate or small in your performance or the way that you talk. I've found that as well, like in some of those bigger rooms where you're just like, oh, this is actually, I'm not projecting or shouting at all now. I'm just able
Yeah.
to speak in the way that I would like to be able to speak on stage.
Yeah. And that's, his Carl's sound system is perfect for that.
Mm.
So, but what was fascinating was, I've seen Carl plenty of times, and it was, but I guess because I was watching him from behind, and
Mhm.
um, every time he does an act out, I don't know if I was cognizant of this before, but he does a lot of sound effects, and it makes a lot of sense. So he was telling a story about being on a plane and a person's bum being here, and
Yeah.
him wanting to, put the finger in the bum to just get them to move, and it comes with a, and every time he did it, and of course, this is a guy that performs in massive rooms, so.
Uh,
So he's got this thing that every time he does something physical, there's a little sound effect which helps it get to the back of the room.
yeah, totally. It's so clever because it is.
Yeah.
It's that, but it also would help with that timing as
Yes.
well of, where, like you said, that rolling laughter that he would
Yeah.
have had to get very used to.
Yeah.
Because I think in a room of 6,000, for example, the first 2,000 or 3,000 are hearing it in real time, and the back half are hearing it like half a beat.
Half a beat, yeah.
Yeah. And so you have to even adjust, yes, your style and the way that you punctuate. I mean, he's always had that sense of, yes, cartoonish sound effects but you're right. It serves an extra purpose,
Yeah.
doesn't it? That it's not just, it's why his act is able to translate to a room that size without
Yeah.
losing, the intricacies of what it is that he does.
Yeah. And it was fascinating to watch. And he just, the whole show just felt conversational. And he
Mm.
was, you know, just like the master of that stage. And it was pretty fascinating to watch. And then before the show finished, before he started the show, he was like, yeah, I just need to tell you after a gig, I just don't really, I'm just going to go back to my hotel. Don't, I've, I don't have much left in me. And I was like, Carl, I'll be on a train back to Sydney. I get it, mate. And then, so anyway, the gig was so
Oh.
great. And then, as I said to you before, Dave Anthony and I have recorded a Feel Bad Christmas pod. And I said to Dave, it was such a good gig to finish on. If anyone offers me, hey, can you come in and fill in this week? I'm going to say no, because that's how I want to finish 2025. I want to finish it with that gig.
Yes.
Yeah. And we finished recording and I picked up the phone and there was a thing, hey, can you fill in for a couple of $100 in this venue? And I just replied, absolutely not.
No, I'm done.
No.
Out on a high, thank you. Big year,
I am not
2025.
I am not rolling the dice to potentially have a fine gig.
No, I'm a bit the same as you. I had that Wagga comedy festival gala gig that Dane Simpson put on,
Yeah, yeah,
and it was a great gig with a whole bunch of great people. And I've had a couple of cheeky inquiries from some people around town going, "Hey, do you want to come and do this thing?" And I'm like, "Nah, I think I'm done.
yeah.
I
I'm
think I'm
good.
done for the year.
It's
I'm
been a big
good."
year.
Yeah.
I'm going to settle on that.
So speaking of shows, I have some shows that are on sale, comedy.com.au. They are the only shows, like proper big shows of what you're talking about, Will, that I'm going to be doing in 2026. And
Mm,
then I might be having a little break from doing like a tour for a while while I put together whatever's next. So,
yeah,
so if people want to come and see me live, those tickets are on sale. I think my entire tour has less tickets to sell than Carl did on that one night for his extra show in Newcastle. So if you want to get in quick,
yeah. If
comedy.com.au.
if you want to make Will give Will a Christmas present, make him feel a
Yeah,
little bit like Carl Barron. Give him a taste of
that's right.
Carl and buy a
Yeah, that'd
ticket
be
to
great.
his show.
I'd really appreciate that. That'd be very cool.
Is there anywhere that it's looking like it's pretty much done that people should really get in?
Yeah, yeah. Like I mean, Brisbane and Melbourne, which ironically are the two that are furthest away,
Yeah,
are the two that I would be most worried about getting a ticket to, because
yeah,
Brisbane's not until like July or
yeah,
something, and it's already like almost half sold out, and
yeah,
Melbourne is not until April, and it's about half sold out as well. So I would get those two. I would particularly rush, but I'd actually love to encourage people to buy tickets to the ones that are sooner. So Perth, I start like at the end of January. So
yeah.
if you are in Perth, end of January, and then Adelaide after that.
And I feel like I can say this, but come on, Adelaide, go and buy
Yeah,
tickets. We
no,
know
you're
what you
right.
like. You
Adelaide,
are so
Adelaide, I've only
laissez-faire.
sold 18% of my tickets available. I'd like to, by Christmas, maybe have sold like, let's say 30%. That would be
We
good.
we know you're gonna go, but
Yeah, that's
can
right.
can you buy the tickets
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
3 days out? Do it.
Yeah. I'm
Let-
pretty confident. This is the thing. You have these conversations with your management, and they're like, all these shows will sell out. Like,
Yeah,
on the projections of where we're at already, like
yeah,
they're pretty confident that every single one of these shows will sell out. I would love, I'd be more confident if they just did.
yeah,
So if you're going to buy a ticket, just buy it now.
yeah.
Don't miss out. I'm not
Give
adding extra shows.
yeah, give him give him a taste of Carl.
We can all be happy. Exactly. Just
Yeah.
a small little taste. That's
Just a
all I
little
want.
taste, yeah. And
Yeah.
you never know. You might add sound effects to the show.
I mean, it sounds like a winner.
Yeah, it does. It works. It really works. All right. Thanks, mate.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you to Will for joining me today, and it was. I hope that it was like this for you as well, but I found it to be quite cathartic to be able to talk to such a close friend about everything that's been going on and be able to express where you're at. So I hope you get a sense of that as well. And there was also some fun stuff in there as well. So yes, keep an eye out for his shows and make sure that you get in early to pick up some tickets. Give him a taste of Carl. That's going to be our motto for the rest of the year. Um, for those of you who think that the Substack memoir might appeal, you can find that at Substack, obviously. There is the free blog that you can subscribe to, and the memoir is a paid subscription, but it is not too expensive, and you can sign up for a year or you can do it monthly. Uh, Over at Patreon, if the audio side of things is more your taste, and if you'd like to see some live shows, etc., you can find that over at the Patreon site. And then also, if you would like to watch this podcast and see Will freak out every time I move and the camera focus on David Bowie. The YouTube page is slowly being built. It's very slow. I know I keep saying it's slow, but there's been a lot going on. So hopefully at the start of next year, there'll be some extra stand-up and stuff being added there as well. If you would like to find links for all of that, go to justinhamilton.com.au/stuff, and you will find all the links for Patreon, Substack, and Instagram, and wherever you would like to find me. Okay, that brings us to the end. I'm about to record my favorites for the year, favorite TV shows, favorite movies, favorite books, etc. I'm not doing best of because best of is an implication that I know best. But I can tell you what my favorites are. So that is the wording that is going into those. So keep an eye and ear out for them. And of course, on Christmas Day, we will have a Feel Bad podcast with Dave Anthony. We recorded that on the Monday, so there's a little bit of a reaction to things that have been going on, and then discussing what's been happening in the States, and just Dave and I, just being the bar humbug people that you may or may not want to engage with on Christmas Day. I feel like there'd be a lot of you that actually do want to engage with it, so we'll drop that. It'll come out first thing in the morning, so maybe you can listen to it on your way to some event that you have to go to. All right, you've been fantastic. Thank you very much for all the kind words about these podcasts. I appreciate all of the emails that you have sent through. I hope you're well. I hope you're safe, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Until then.